Hello, everyone. This is just a basic overview of Skeleton. It is a framework. It is responsive. It is designed to be fairly straightforward. When you get started with it, the first thing you're going to need to do is go to getskeleton.com and choose download. When you do the download, you're going to receive a zipped file that you're going to need to expand. When you expand that file, you are going to receive a sample index page and a folder marked CSS with 2 CSS documents in it. And you're also going to receive another folder, images. That one will only have one image in it. I've added 3 additional images. The one image in that folder is this S fave icon. Let's get started with this. I have opened up brackets, and inside of brackets, I opened up the index that comes with the download that you do. I want to show you what that looks like. So I'm working inside of Google Chrome. I'm going to open a file in Google Chrome and choose index. When I do, this is the basic page you're going to see. And if I viewed the source, this is what you would see. I'm going to break down this page for you a bit. As with all of our documents, it starts with doc type HTML, then head. This particular document is showing you a few things that are pretty interesting, such as how to use a Google font, how to link to a Google font, in this case, Railway. You may have noticed that this is not the default font, and how we bring that in. And then there's also a link section in the head of the document, and this link section is bringing in the normalized CSS file, that is this one here, and the skeleton CSS file, that is this one here. We're going to take a look at those, but before we do, I want to break down just a bit more about this very simple document. This document is deceiving in terms of how simple it is, because what it's doing is it is setting up a series of divs or containers. This first div container is going to contain a row from lines 35 through 40. And because I click on this inside of brackets, it tells me where my closing div is. I might want to also put in a comment to myself that says closing row 1. Later, when I go to put content into this, I would then know where I'm going to find and make my edits. So I'm going to save that comment. Okay, so let's take a peek at the documentation that comes with Get Skeleton so we can break down this container, this row, and the grid. Inside of the container, which is the majority of the whole page, you can have as many rows as you would like. Inside of that row, you need to have columns. Now, those columns, you don't have to use these, but if you choose to use the columns, which is the strength of this grid, this 12-column grid, you could have one column that is 4 columns wide, so one div, if you will, one block, 4 wide, and a corresponding block that is 8 wide. And we might do a left-hand navigation in this particular column, and then the majority of our content in this column. So we say div class equals, and then the column class that we want to use. Now, in the case of the page that came with it, this is just a small page, and it is only taking up 1/2 of the total width of the page. So let's go look a little bit more. because Skeleton has provided some specialized columns. But in the text, in the help document that comes with Skeleton, it clearly demarks the container, that columns should be in a row. And then here's a sample, 1 column and 11 columns, or 2 columns and 10 columns. And then here are the specialized 1/3 column, 2/3. So essentially, it's doing some of the work for us, or 1/2 and 1/2. I'm not going to go on further. Instead, I'm going to go and look at just one row where I've added a little bit more content. What I did is I chose to copy this material with the container, the row, and then 2 columns, the first being 1 column, and then the next one being 11 to match it up to 12. Now, this is called Skeleton-1 row, and I can, before I upload my materials, just go and File, Open File, and find my document and open it. Here is my 1 row. My 1 row actually has 2 columns in it, so maybe that's not the best choice, but let's break this down. Here is 1/12 and 11/12. Here is 2 columns and 10 columns. So 1 div that is 2 columns wide and 1 div that is 10 columns wide. And I put a comment here, should I nest columns inside of rows? Skeleton does not recommend it because it has broken things down very nicely in terms of percentages and spaces. And we can take a look at that in the actual CSS itself. But I was going to scroll down and show you there's more in the documentation. And before I finish up this first screencast on the basics of Skeleton, I want to point out that for this to work on your iPad and on your mobile device, your phone, etc., you also need, and it's very important, up in the head to set the viewport. And this is brand new to most of you since we started responsive web design. By choosing to add in viewport with width, device width, we are saying, please display my content at 100% initial scale, 100% of the viewable screen. This should get you started. All of this information came with the download of Skeleton. Next up, a little bit more in depth on Skeleton.